Let's go!
They do it for a reason, and they make sure that you basically... Let's do this again.
Do it again. Thanks, Chris.
We're going to do it
in the
again.
middle of a podcast. What? Who said
all
it was
good.
open? It's okay. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. And I was mumbling. It's perfect.
All right, come in. You want to screw it up? Come in again. All right.
Where's your... I'm just trying to see this. Okay. Maybe come over here. Just make it like symmetry. There we go. Okay, good.
All right.
All right.
Should we start with this again?
What's those cheat notes you have there?
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. I want to read you something. It's a poem. If you are looking for a ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Does that sound familiar to you?
Good luck.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do. That is actually the fantastic scene recreation, Liam Neeson from Taken. And the question is why? Why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you about situational awareness? Why am I going into this, Mike? What is this podcast about today?
Are you trying to say that there's a chance that we could be taken?
There is a chance we could be taken. In fact, let's get serious right now. You might be taken listening right now as we're speaking.
And not taken and smitten by our voices.
No.
We're talking about personal security.
Yes.
Whether you considered it or not, we have amazing guests today, TJ and Boris, who are experts on personal security. How to keep safe when you travel, how to keep safe when you're just walking about in your neighborhood, banking on your phone, and how to make sure your cell phone doesn't get plucked out of your hands too.
That's right.
Say, tune in today. You're just going to find, really cool guys. They're about the most practical way to keep safe. And that applies to everyone, even the macho man.
Exactly. And they have...
Yeah,
exactly. They got a big conference coming up from the GREYMAN group, which is basically their formation. The GREYMAN Security
GREYMAN
Group.
Security.
An extensive skill set. We're very excited to have them on board. Next, I'm standing in the 6.
Nice.
Good.
Okay, good. Boom. Done.
Straight out of the T-Dot.
That's what it is.
Live from the 6 boroughs.
Don't go nowhere.
For sure. Welcome to Standing in the 6 with your hosts Michael and Constantine.
Well, good morning, everyone. Actually, let's rewind here. We're doing this in the afternoon today. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everyone, on this wonderful, beautiful day today. Very excited, as always. I'm probably the most excitable person that you've ever met. But we have TJ and Boris. And you mentioned the last name,
Milinkovich.
Milinkovich. Is that Serbian?
Croatian.
Croatian.
Okay,
Hey.
kind of close.
Strong blood.
Kind of close.
Strong blood. And TJ Kennedy.
And TJ Kennedy.
Irish.
Exactly.
Yes. If you guys know Kennedy Station out in Scarborough, named after him.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. And they're both from GREYMAN Security. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a security conference coming up in October, and it's titled GREYMAN, this personal security conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm so glad to have you guys. I have a lot of history with you, TJ. I was actually talking about this morning. Were we your first, like, when we were working back in the how we met, my memories of you coming to the office in the old office.
Yeah.
Were we your first security thing?
When I moved back to Toronto in
Yeah.
2012, back
Yeah.
in the day, I was looking around, and you guys were my first security employer back in 2012. I did some work with you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how long it's been.
Yeah.
Wow.
7 years now.
And the TJ of back then would have been a shaved head and no beard.
Right. This has been 7 years. 7 years in the making.
Yes.
Hey.
I've tried, man. I've tried doing it. I just, somewhere along the lines, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. But
You
it looks
can't
good.
tolerate it. I can't do it. It's
No.
just a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
You
comes
got a
down-
pretty face. You don't want to hide that.
He can't grow hair.
I was talking to Boris. I said I was feeling the urge to shave it, but then I decided to not go ahead and do that. And then we got realized we had this podcast today, so I
Right.
realized it was going to be on camera, so I'm happy that I kept it.
Okay, good, man.
Ooh, hey.
Good. Very good.
Nice.
And Boris, obviously, we just met.
Yep.
Thank you for coming down as well.
Thank you for having me.
So I think it's good to kind of just hear about, first of all, the word GREYMAN. When I hear GREYMAN, this is my own interpretation of it. GREYMAN, it sounds like men of the earth. Like that's how it would sound like. You're guys that are just like the people's people. That's how I would get it.
Not incorrect. Not
Yeah.
incorrect.
Mike,
Okay. That's
what do you get from GREYMAN? Like
GREYMAN.
just hearing the word GREYMAN.
No, I didn't have a vivid picture like you.
You didn't, eh?
No, I just to me it's whatever these guys say it is.
That was a gray area, right?
It's a gray area. There you go.
Hey,
So what's
without
GREYMAN?
going into 50 Shades of
Yeah,
Grey, if you could
Sure,
just-
sure.
yeah.
So GREYMAN is kind of a take on the concept of when you're out and about in the world from a personal security standpoint, to be a gray man, quote unquote. So that's that you don't attract a lot of attention, either positive or negative. You just kind of, make your way through the world, and you're not remembered very well, right?
Right.
And that's a skill set and a lifestyle that when you're traveling or when you're going through urban areas and stuff like that, and you want to be more on top of your personal security and more aware of your surroundings and more easily be able to traverse those surroundings without kind of being picked on by or selected by predators of various kinds, right? And criminals that want to come after you, right? So if you're not easily noticed, if you don't look flashy, if you don't look like you got a lot of money or jewelry, or you fall into a particular demographic, you're just easily forgettable. That concept is called being a gray man.
Amazing.
Okay, I like that.
That's really cool.
You know-
And that completely goes against Instagram and social media
Yeah,
and everything, right? You know what I mean? So
Well, sure. I mean, you could do it that way, but then nobody will ever come and learn anything from you. So,
Right,
yeah.
So we try and balance.
It's a gray area.
It is a gray area. Yeah, it's
yeah.
a gray area.
No, I'm
where-
not saying personally. I just mean if everyone is all about their brand, promote everything, but a gray man, I want to ask you, personal security, what is that?
So whereas most people look at things like personal safety is more about dealing with identifiable hazards that are out there. So if we look out the window here, there's people working on scaffolding and stuff like that. From a safety perspective, right? They know that there's particular hazards that are present in their work and in their life. They could fall. There's electrical outlets. There's toxic chemicals. Blah blah blah. They're hazards that are identifiable, and they can take steps to be safer, okay? Because those hazards won't necessarily come after them or are actionable. They're just there. They can identify them. They can take steps. So they wear arresting equipment if they fall, that sort of stuff, right? Steel-toed boots, hard hats, all that.
CSA.
Yeah, exactly. But for personal security, security is the way of being secure against other forces impacting your life. So when we look at how to make ourselves more secure in our lives, then we look at things like home security, making sure your home can't be as easily accessed or penetrated by somebody that wants to break in. So
You said something like travel, when you travel.
So when you travel, another thing, right? You want to be more of a gray man when you travel, right? You don't want to get off a plane and people being able to pick you off at the airport being like, oh, look at that rich guy, we're going to go after him, right? Whether or not you're rich is beyond the point. It's how do you present, right? So when there's people looking to victimize you in some way, if you present to them that you're easily identifiable, that you have things that they want, that you're not aware of your surroundings, that sort of stuff, and you're not taking precautions to make it difficult for them to victimize you, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? So when we talk about personal security, we're talking about how to make yourself a hard target, a difficult target, or a not selectable target for somebody wanting to victimize you. So if you're walking down the street and someone's looking to pickpocket you, they're looking for someone that they're going to easily be able to notice, and that they feel that they can have a high chance of success in being able to victimize you, right?
Oh, it's really interesting.
So that's the kind of difference between safety and security. Is there's always threats out there that change all the time, right? And if you carry yourself in a way that prevents it from being likely that they will be successful in victimizing you or getting what they want, they'll go on to something else or somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah, amazing.
It's like a fancy way of saying, risk and threat management. More or
Yeah,
less.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
was
get the next guy, kind of like,
Yeah.
outrun your friend so
Yeah,
the
you
bear
don't have
gets
to outrun
him.
the bear. You have to outrun your friend. That's right.
Yeah, or like for your home, right? If you've set up your home in a way that when someone's looking to break in and steal something, they want to look at your house and be like, either it doesn't appeal to them in any way, or it becomes more trouble than it's worth, and they'll go somewhere else.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay?
And honey, that's for you to know. That's why I need a Doberman for the family, right?
Yeah, because
Okay.
unless unless someone really wants to get their arms ripped off, they're probably not going to go into
Yeah.
a house
Right.
with a Doberman,
Right.
that's barking at them.
Classic
Right.
case is like, don't have your wallet hanging out at the back of your purse open, or
That's
leave
right.
your designer sunglasses on the dash of your car, or
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you're walking around and you're staring at your cell phone instead of what's going on around you, right?
Yeah.
I was walking down Strawn Avenue, crossing the bridge into Liberty Village like 2 years ago, and
there was probably construction then, as there is now.
It's
Okay.
like it's like the earth was formed and there was construction,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But on the other side of the bridge was a guy walking along, and he was just staring at his cell phone, and another guy ran up behind him, plucked the cell phone out of his hands, and
Are
just
you-
bolted.
are you kidding
and
me?
I'm just like,
That's bold.
Did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, did that just happen? Like here?
Was
you
the
know?
guy fast?
And, oh, he was fast. He took it, and he was like down the street, around the corner. And the other guy is just standing there, lost his cell phone. And he's like, "Hey, come back!" Like, dude,
Come back.
he's not coming back. It's not like a joke. It's not like you know him. So, it's not like
Can you imagine
TJ
the guy stopped and said, "Okay,
got you.
yeah,
yeah.
because you asked me to come back, I'm gonna
Yes.
come back."
Sorry.
Whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Bad thief.
Yeah.
But,
He'd ask him for his unlock code.
If
Yeah.
you really need it, yeah, that's what it is.
But the scary thing is, I'm guessing, is that his phone was probably unlocked. And
Oh, you're right,
because he
yeah.
was just using it, and Buddy just kind of like skipped up behind him and just went pop.
That's
Took
so
it right out of his
blatant.
hand and bolted. And
Right.
the other guy stopped. He was like, "Hey, come back."
Yeah,
But I guess easy target. I think that's what
Easy
you're
target.
saying.
You're
An
not
easy
paying
target.
attention.
Yeah.
Right. So when it comes to kind of the GREYMAN concept and personal security, what we go through and what we try and cover is looking at violence prevention on a larger scale or a wider scale, whereas we look at what factors influence people to try and victimize you, and being able to recognize those factors, fix them, address them, put into practice certain techniques or tradecraft to be able to mitigate those things so that you're not actually victimized at all, or people don't select you for it. Right?
It's amazing. I mean, we're obviously you're drawing on some type of expertise and a blend of experience in order to teach these things. TJ, can you kind of give an idea, talk about your experience, with the street? I know that you have a lot of it, and just kind of, where does this know-how come from?
Sure. In terms of personal security, risk management, and that, my focus is on the defensive tactics component, or dealing with kind of the human adversarial threats that exist. So I have a background, I guess, it started with infatuation with martial arts, and kind of grew up in traditional martial arts, and in my kind of adult years got into combat sports and Muay Thai and competition, and so I have that kind of force-on-force experience. But then, when I started working in security, I actually pretty quickly got into the world of bouncing and doing nightclubs and being a doorman. And you learn, pretty quick, some of the stuff that you should just throw out the window, and some of the things that can work. And then you're also dealing with not just the physical threat right there, but then you have maybe a legal aftermath that you have to deal with. So there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yes.
And
The real world is a great refiner,
Yeah.
right, of what you know, no matter what
Yeah.
it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So probably, I want to say 15, 16 years doing that kind of a security. It helped me just refine that. And being very, very lucky to kind of stand on shoulders of some giants. Like when I've gone around to training or teaching at different places, I've been able to rub shoulders with some people that I've been lucky to have in my life. Present company not excluded, that have their own expertise and were able to kind of offer their perspective. And what I was presenting was changing and shifting over time. But so essentially that's my focus is giving people kind of ideas and knowledge and training in terms of behavioral analysis, how to recognize and predict kind of violent behavior before it occurs, so you can not be there when it goes off. If you miss the cues or you're ambushed and now you're dealing with it, the physical skills are going to get you out of there fast. And then a little bit of help along the way and how to articulate yourself, because if you have to explain what you did, you don't want to say something that's going to land yourself in hot water.
Yes, really smart. I mean, I you may not know this. I'm an avid follower of Kennedy Tactical. I mean, I can say if you check out TJ stuff on Instagram, it's so practically based. I love that you just do a real world setting. I love that it's not like a pool of just the people that and they jump in, and sometimes they say more in the video than you do or show more. So that's amazing. That's like the true heart of a teacher, is to make it as potent as possible. You are your first line of defense. That's something that I that stuck with me. I've repeated that to my daughters. I've showed my daughters, no joke, your videos of just if someone were to grab you, and they know how to move their body from their torso to just to be able to rip away. Some of the simplest things, because you never know, So some of the stuff that you put up is so amazing.
Thank you.
I know you probably hear from a lot of people, and you work closely with them. Some of the stuff that we were talked about off the top is the work with women. Okay, speaking of case in point, my daughters are 13 and 10. You guys have this initiative that you do self-defense classes for women.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know.
So we, so when I first met TJ several years ago, it was more just to kind of build on my own kind of combatives experience and stuff. Even though it's not something that I necessarily teach because it's not really my bag, but I always like to learn more, and I'm always kind of learning as a student, right? Like a lifelong student. And we were talking about this initiative to just put our skills together and put on a kind of a more holistic approach to women's self-defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done, because a lot of traditional self-defense classes for women, it's like they don't approach things in a realistic way.
Yes.
It's like come in, spend an hour, hit a pad, and then you can take on the world afterwards, right? So whoever teaches that sort of stuff, I think they do a disservice to the women that are attending, right? And it should just be self-defense, not like women's self-defense, right?
Yes.
But there's also women-specific issues that come into play, and you don't really need a lot of like macho guys making people uncomfortable, right? So we blended.
Case in point, like a bed. I remember one video you actually did. If you were pinned down on a bed, and so someone's
Yeah.
on top of you, forcing their way on you,
Yeah.
how to get out from there.
And
Right.
So some of those kinds of considerations. So what we've taken is the kind of violent continuum where we have things that are pre-violence, right? Pre-attack, pre-hurt, pre-violence. And we look at that behavioral analysis, that situational awareness, the active risk management,
The indicators.
the
Yeah.
GREYMAN principle when you walk around and stuff like that, how you need to be aware of your environment, right? And how that environment feels and moves when you move through it, and to pick up on all those indicators and cues of impending violence, right?
Because they are there, right?
They're always there.
Yeah, I've heard it. I mean, this is general, but I've heard it that someone who got, say, robbed on the street, they knew it was going to happen. When they ask them, they had either a gut feeling, or
Yep.
they just knew that the footsteps behind them started to increase, or like there's something, if they knew, even on the back end, even though they were victimized, that they almost kicked themselves thinking, man, I could have avoided this somehow.
And sometimes it's because people don't trust their own instincts to just turn around or take a look. Sometimes they have the instincts, they trust it, but they don't know what to do with it, right? So our goal is to be able to focus those instincts on how to identify consciously what those indicators are when you go through your day, not to create paranoia, but to create understanding, right? So there's a difference there. We don't.
Yes.
We're not trying to market fear in any way. We don't want people to go through life being afraid, but we want them to be aware. Because if you're aware of things, then you can take steps to mitigate threats and risks,
And
right?
then it empowers you.
Exactly.
That's what it is,
and that's the ultimate kind of payoff for it. So ideally, if we can avoid violence, that's the goal, right? Oh, that guy looks sketchy. I don't want to really get into it.
Yeah, so-
dark alley at night, maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't walk down there by myself, right? Those are very general examples, but if you understand what the threats are, and you can take action to avoid them, then hopefully you can avoid being violently victimized, right? So that's kind of the big chunk at the beginning, the front end. Then we deal with the actual violent encounter, which is a very small snippet in time, right? Violent encounters are very quick usually, right? They happen, they're explosive, and then they're usually done with, but they don't take a lot of time, right? You can go through your whole day being situationally aware and avoiding threats, and that takes up a big portion of your actual time. But a violent encounter, they just kind of happen really quickly,
Seconds,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
Seconds to maybe a minute or two, and then it's done, right? And then we also look at what happens when those defensive tactics, those combative tactics, don't work, and they don't really go the way that you wanted them to go or hoped. So then
Yes.
we look at things that I specialize in, which is kind of the aftermath of counter custody. So what happens if you're out to a bar with your friends and you wake up and you're like tied to a radiator or to a bed, or in a bathtub, or you're handcuffed in the trunk of a car and stuff like that. So I focus on the counter custody aspect of it, so of restraint escapes and that sort of stuff, to what happens when you've been forced or unknowingly put into a situation where you're being held against your will. and that's the aftermath of it. You know, you could be walking down the street, someone clocks you in the side of the head, knocks you out, you wake up in a trunk.
Yeah.
What do you do from there, right?
You cover, we were saying earlier, everything from like zip ties, handcuffs, duct tape,
and rope.
Yeah.
So the kind of common ways that that people are illegally restrained.
Yes, which happens more often than people think.
Yeah, especially recently, we've been seeing a lot more in the GTA, abduction attempts and stuff like that. But there's the one video. It was like a spring break video, and it shows this girl kind of like with her phone, kind of selfie video herself, and her drink is off to the side behind her, and some guy drops a tablet or something.
Have you seen this?
No.
And
it's scary. It is scary.
I don't know, like I don't have it, but if you look it up on YouTube, I've seen the video several times, and
Happens in a flash.
She's taking a selfie at a party, and
Yeah,
she's kind of just partying, and she has a
she's
drink in her
walking,
hand.
and the guy behind her just nonchalantly sees her do it and just drops a tab of something.
Right.
And you can only sit there and think it's like she passed out at some point and was like, who the hell knows what happened to her,
Right.
you know? So not a good scene. So, you know, do you practice that kind of personal protection? Do you keep your hand on your drink, you know, if you're going out, right? Or get a bottle that you can keep your thumb over, that sort of stuff.
Situational awareness, right?
That's right,
Yeah.
right? And having that wherewithal that you can take those steps to mitigate those threats. So what happens if, you know, you wake up, someone's roofied your drink, and you wake up and you're zip tied to a, you know, to a bedpost or to a radiator? How are you going to get out of that?
Yeah.
And, you know, depending.
And you're not the Equalizer.
And you're not the
or
Equalizer.
Jason Bourne.
Yeah, and
Or-
even then, right? You're sitting there. If you know the techniques and you understand the mechanics of both the physics and the actual material mechanics of what you're dealing with, and you're prepared and you're trained, you have a lot more better of a chance of getting yourself out of that bad situation.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of just pulling on it or, you know, cutting your hand off or something. Yeah, that'll work, but it's not exactly what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So I delve into the minutia of how those restraints work, how those situations tend to evolve, and what they can do to get themselves out of it. And our Women's Day classes that we've put on now for a couple of years have been fantastically successful. We've had the same feedback from everybody every time, and it's all positive, but the same thing stands out. Nobody ever talks about this in quote unquote women's self-defense classes.
That's
sure,
true.
we hit a pad and it's like, yeah, you know, hit the guy here or whatever, but nobody talks about the front end, how to avoid it, and certainly nobody talks about what happens when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And, you know, the feedback was fantastic. People want to take more of that learning and understand, you know, to those kinds of
That's
techniques.
amazing.
How often do you guys do them?
So the Women's Day one is
Yeah,
on
we do
internet.
it International Women's Day in and around that.
Yeah.
We do it every year. We've partnered with a bar on College Street called Night Owl Toronto.
Yes.
And so they've donated their space, I want to say, for 3-4 years now.
Very nice.
We've been able to do that every year there. And we've had some, we had 2 months there, and when we first started it, where it was every week for 2 full months, and every class was packed.
Right.
Yeah, so we're able to get the message out.
Amazing.
But we do, and that's for for International Women's Day. But like I run my own workshops and stuff like that. There's one coming up in mid-October. We have GREYMAN, which I'll be teaching that stuff at, and then I have other stuff as well that's coming afterwards in October. But I'll work with private groups if they want to learn that sort of stuff. And
I'm curious. Have you ever worked with, on some of this stuff, counter custody?
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with executives? Or has any corporate company brought you in, said, we're such and such mining company. We have a couple of executives going to this part of the world. There are kidnappings. Has that ever happened yet?
Not at this point. No, not to this point. Yeah.
Okay.
I've only been up and running for about just over a year now, but I've been doing this stuff for about 12 years now.
Yeah.
As a sideline to all my other stuff.
To me, it's a phenomenon. You guys bring something that everyday people need to know, 100%.
For sure.
It's one of those interesting things where not everyone knows it.
Well,
and
that's
they,
just
they
it,
don't
yeah.
they don't know that they need to know it. They don't consider it. It's not mainstream.
But
you
not
know?
only that, people don't even think it's going to happen to them.
That's
just it. Yeah.
Like, I'll give you an example. And we spoke about this earlier. Who would think that you would go to Mexico, right? beautiful place. I've been there a couple of times, and something tragic would happen that potentially, I mean, you could not really prepare for on the most simplistic terms, right? I mean, that happened to you. TJ, I mean, why don't you speak about that, TJ? Because I think it's important into what you guys are saying, and the value is preparing for the unknown. You have an alarm for your house, so nobody burglarizes it, right? Or a Doberman.
Yeah.
Right? So to have a skill set,
Or the club.
yeah, exactly.
For your Corvette.
To have exactly. To have a skill set, right, that basically prepares you for something, is also critical. I mean, TJ, why don't you share what happened? Because I think people hear this story, it's going to open up a lot of eyes.
Sure.
And ears.
It really started for me kind of a few months before we actually left, where my cousin, close to me, combined a personal hero in life, he'd built a school in Cap Haitian in Haiti where there was no education ever before. Anybody that's been there has never been to school.
Right.
Wow.
So he built a school, hand built it with basically volunteers, no running water, none of that. That educates now somewhere between 250 to 300 people. It has food programs for them as well, and doing a really good job down there. And it's helped with an organization called Live Different, build in the hundreds of homes for people down there, and especially in the wake of the earthquake and hurricanes and stuff. And there was a hurricane in 2016, I want to say, and he flew over with in a private jet with his friends plane. They were giving hurricane relief supplies. It was just kind of be an in and out.
Right.
And on the way back, they ran into an electrical storm, and they ended up crashing into the ocean. And basically, they're all gone. The three of them in the plane, and the body has never recovered. And
Oh, wow.
that kind of ruined me for a while.
Wow.
And so I got maybe a month or so after that, that was October, right?
Yeah.
So I get a message, hey, in January, do you want to go on this security detail to Mexico for a BPM music festival?
Right.
It pays what it pays, which was comparable to rates here, so it wasn't anything super special, but it was all expenses
But
paid
it's
trip
Mexico.
to Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your
Yeah.
mind off of things, just
Right.
take a bit of a mental break. I thought this is a perfect opportunity just to kind of get my head out of the, just to kind of improve my mood a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, the everyday grind.
Everyday grind,
Exactly.
yeah, and everything was going on. So went over there, and for the first
How many days is this festival?
10-day festival. So we flew in, a couple days before, maybe have 2 days just to kind of chill out, get acquainted with your team, get acquainted with the place. Then you just worked basically for your 10 days. And then we had another 2 days on the tail end, was supposed to be kind of a little bit of R&R. And on the last night of the festival, we had two closing parties. One was on the beach at a place called the Blue Parrot, and another one was in the jungle, and it was
Right.
called the Jungle. And that's where I was stationed. But at the other party, we caught wind that there was gunfire, and one of our guys was shot and down. And so we quickly had to. I can't speak to really what happened on that end. On our end, we had to evacuate the entire place. There's thousands of people there, so we had to evacuate it, get all the talent out, and we had. We had struggles as well and challenges because inside the festival there, if you're operating anything in Mexico, you're not doing it without the cartel's kind of approval and know-how.
Right.
And so they were doing their thing in the festival inside our venue as well. So we were kind of having to navigate this very strategically. And basically, once we got everyone out of the venue, we ended up taking all the badging off our shirts, off the vans, hightailing it back to the hotel, and then we all worked on, as many of us as we could, booking kind of emergency flights out of the country that night. A lot of us did leave.
Right.
And the next day, the narco blankets went up, naming the festival, naming the owner of the festival, saying that
Wow.
we need to watch ourselves and so on and so forth. And it was kind of at the beginning of an escalation of cartel violence in that zone. I guess there was some warring cartels and territory. And during an electronic music festival, as you can imagine, there's a lot of drug sales.
Mm.
And so they make a lot of money when there's that many tourists in the country for that thing. So, they all wanted a piece of the pie, I guess. And,
Right.
someone got upset that, someone got upset at someone else, and long story short, they opened fire into that one club in the closing party, and ended up, I think, 5 people died. One of them was our guy, and another it wasn't even a shooting. She was like an 18-year-old girl from the States that got trampled to death in the aftermath.
Yeah.
So it was pretty sad. So that goes to say, or goes towards understanding the risk that you're dealing with.
Right.
I don't think, because they've had 9 or 10 years or however many years of successful festivals there, they just didn't really think that this risk existed.
Right.
They didn't really take that threat seriously, and and here we are for it.
That's the result.
That's the result.
Now, let me ask you this: when that happened, after the fact, right now, when you're looking at like creating scenarios to basically train on, could you look back at that and say, this is something that we could put training on for situations like this? Because there's also like, there's no two situations that are going to happen the same.
That's right.
Right? So like you could train one way for something and it'll never ever go down that way, no matter how many variables you put into the mix. So with that said, how do you train or prepare yourself for a situation to make sure that you don't wake up and you're tied to a bed, for example, or you're in a situation like how can you train around that, like, to kind of put that into place?
Being situationally aware and understanding the risk, learning how to avoid those situations before they become situations is key. And then, as Boris said, even that sliver where the violence does occur, it happens in seconds, but having the skills to deal with it in that moment. And then, again, as Boris said, those, nothing is guaranteed, right? Those skills don't carry you through the situation, and then you end up zip-tied or duct-taped or something, at a second location. Then how do I kind of work to free myself from here? So basically, how do we give people those skills is we present kind of a beginning to end approach. We take them through situational awareness, behavioral analysis, understanding what is a predator looking for, what is a criminal looking for, what does their behavior look like, how can you identify it, when it comes to being face to face with it, how do you physically navigate that regardless of what your current skill set is. People aren't going to fully advocate people go train in combat sports. It's great to go do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or boxing or wrestling or Muay Thai or anything, but that's not addressing that asymmetrical criminal violence. So most people aren't going to take 10 years to get a BJJ black belt, right?
For sure.
But they can learn the concepts. They can learn the concepts in an afternoon, and if you drill those basic concepts, they can stick and they can use them. So we kind of do that. We break it down to a conceptual level, give them a couple of key pieces that they can improvise a solution with. And as you said, no situation's the same. So I'm in situation 1 to situation 300, but I have a set of ideas and concepts that can be morphed to fit any of those scenarios.
Now you guys are doing something coming up right now, right? You guys are putting together a course.
Yeah. So so we have GREYMAN as a conference coming up. So we envisioned it as being able to bring a bunch of specialists in the personal security field together in one place, so that people can have a kind of a buffet, so to speak, of skill sets that they can learn in one place, in one time, on a weekend, and they can get those various disciplines all in one place, and they can go from there. So if they find, listen, I feel confident in my combatives ability, but you know what? These soft skills that this one guy is teaching, I wanna learn more about that. Or you know what? I never did any counter custody work, so I'd like to learn more about that.
And it's all there, like you said, a buffet.
It's all there. So you're there kind of like Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And nobody else really in Canada has done it before.
No.
Do you know what this sounds like? I'm just sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was watching The Matrix yesterday, and there was a part where he basically he sits down and they upload all these skill sets into his system: kung fu, jiu-jitsu, all this, and he gets this like
I know kung
huge
fu,
arsenal.
yeah.
Exactly. What you're basically teaching here is a great experience where you can have literally a little taste of something, and then basically if they want to push on one specific area, they can go even deeper and get more learning.
The only difference is you have to come down and attend. You cannot download.
Yeah,
That's
you can't
right.
download
That's
it. Sorry,
Otherwise it'd be
guys.
Not
so
yet.
much easier.
Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like on just to follow up with what TJ said, we take a principles based approach, or at least when we teach together, because for instance, using your environment, whatever environment you have, to your advantage in a violent confrontation. So I can teach you 100 different techniques, and in that clinch, your brain is going to be trying to go through that catalog of techniques. Or you can have the concept or the principle that's bounce Buddy's head off the wall or the ground. Okay,
Right.
Yes.
simple. How I'm going to do it, that doesn't really matter. But
Right. That's the end
that's
goal.
an option.
Yes.
So when you have the principle or the concept is what you're doing, and however you achieve it is just situationally based, because no situation is ever going to be the same as the second one. But you know what the concept is, you know what the end goal is, and you know kind of how to do it, then you can just initiate and make it happen.
Okay.
So with me, the same thing kind of goes with counter custody work. If I'm teaching you how and why restraints work and how and why they're defeated, and I give you options for them and you learn the principles behind it, then even if you don't have tools with you that were manufactured, you can actually manufacture something yourself in a given situation. Like I can walk down the street here and probably in about maybe 5-10 minutes, I can get out of a pair of handcuffs because I'll find stuff in the environment that I can fashion or shape to meet my needs, right? Mm-hmm. So these sorts of things. And I just want to take a side note that when I'm talking about restraint escape,
he means unlawfully confined.
It's to get out of unlawful
Right.
restraint and unlawful
Right.
confinement. Because if you get arrested by the cops, that's a
Yes.
lawful arrest.
Exactly.
Don't do anything to get out of that. Right.
Yes.
That's
Thanks for bringing that up
Yeah.
because I know Mike was
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
There's two.
yeah,
We get,
yeah.
we're together at trade shows and stuff, demonstrating the skill sets, and we do get looked at sideways sometimes for that. But
Right.
it's
And then,
Right.
there's a whole group of misfits like licking their chops, like, "Ooh, this
Oh
is good
yeah,
stuff."
it
man."
happens all the
This is
time. and then you get challenged by people, and they say, "Well, you're teaching people how to be criminals." Because I also teach physical security, lock picking, lock bypassing, and
Right.
security analysis. And they're like, "Oh, you're teaching people to be criminals?" Like, whoa, they're a criminal before they even met me, right?
Exactly.
I didn't turn anyone into a criminal.
Exactly.
And the reason that I teach that side of stuff, the lock picking, lock bypassing, is that once you understand the physical security around you and our society, how it's based on locks and doors and access, you can make your assessments, you can understand where your weaknesses are,
Yep.
and then you can test those weaknesses, and then you can make informed decisions on how to improve that situation, right? If you don't understand why something is crap, you're not going to be able to make an informed decision on what to improve it with. You're just going to go to Home Depot, spend a lot of money to stay in the same crap bracket you were in before,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So that's why I look at physical security, personal security, combatives, right, and disaster preparedness, and all in one whole kind of approach to be more secure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's important. I wanted to say, we know, two things. My wife, it's a very real thing. 3 things. First thing,
four things.
Four
Go for
things.
four.
I
Let's go for four.
heard
Yeah,
it
yeah.
once said,
Yeah.
I remember hearing, there was a lady, a man asked a woman, he said to her, and it's related to self-defense, he said, "What is the difference between me learning self-defense and you learning self-defense?" And the woman said, "Easy. You don't know what it's like to walk around in fear." Okay?
It's a very, very
Right.
reasonable response.
And it surprised the guy. I remember the guys thinking, there's moments where he felt like he was aware of something,
Sure, but it's different.
but it's just different. Okay? So she said that you need to factor that in. You need to understand, be aware of what it's like to be a woman walking late at night, and all the different variables that we have to factor in. Where you could be listening to your AirPods and just enjoying your music. Okay?
Yeah.
Which isn't safe for anybody.
That's
Secondly,
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Secondly, my wife last week literally said, she comes home and she said, she runs in the door, okay? I'm like, "Wilma, where were you?" And she's like, "I thought someone was following me." And she went, it was nighttime. She walked across the street, went to Metro to get some milk, late night milk, because I had a craving for milk. Okay, I'm joking.
There he is on the couch. Go
But-
get me milk.
So yeah, exactly.
his wife beater.
Hold on, just watching a rerun.
Where's my milk?
Yeah,
Better be 2%.
Exactly. Oh, it's homogenized. Anyways, she said that literally she felt like a guy was following her. She made a turn, he was still there. So she attached herself to another group of people that were kind of smoking and just chilling outside a spot. The guy just passed by her. Okay. It could have just been her mind racing. It could have been that he was. I applauded her. I said, "Okay, great." And I actually asked her, "What if that group wasn't there? What would you do?" She's like, I don't know. Okay. So then we had a conversation and what some of your options could be. Even that dialogue, you can see for her, it went from powerless to empowerment. Like just getting an idea. Oh yeah, I could do that. I don't have to just be quiet, recluse. And that is the tendency. The instinct for a lot of people is to freeze, is to get small. Okay.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say is I know a lady that went to the bank in the middle of the day. She went to the plaza, was in her own world, got in her car, and as soon as she got in the car, two gentlemen jumped in her car. Passenger seat, back seat behind her, put a knife to her neck. Okay? Passenger seat guy beside her said, don't do anything stupid. They robbed her of everything. Okay? I think they might even got her PIN number for some of her bank. Like literally just like terrified her. There was a long knife right to her neck. That happened not that long ago in Toronto. So just to give you an idea, like where's that on news? CP24 is not going to feature that?
A lot of that stuff doesn't end up on the news unless it's kind of sensational, right? But that's not sensational. That's terrible, and it doesn't make the news, right? But it does happen. We're pretty cosmopolitan city, and we're pretty worldly city. But with that comes a lot of those same kinds of risk factors, right? And for people to say, well, that would never happen here, is a really naive way of looking at the world, right? Who would have thought there'd be, a shooting at the Raptors parade, right? People are like, oh, this is so great for Toronto. Bang, 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 right?
Yeah, and who would have thought that your son's been taking money out of your wallet since the age of 10 and taking your car in the night? And like, no, Jonathan would never do that. Okay, so, yeah.
But that's the thing, like, would you get, that stuff doesn't happen here. Human trafficking doesn't happen in Toronto. Sure it does, right? All those kinds of things that would happen in quote-unquote bigger cities, they happen in Toronto just on a smaller scale because we have fewer people, but they still happen.
Yeah, big city problems.
So we still have violent crimes. We still have assaults of all kinds all the time. They just don't hit the news.
What's something my wife, she was right here, and imagine there was no group to tag out to blend into, to take shelter. What should she do? If someone is, and she feels that this guy's walking behind me, she doesn't know it concretely. There's that feeling of I don't want to be wrong and whatever, but this guy's kind of on her tail. What should she do?
She sounds like she actually started to do the right thing, which was, okay, I feel like I'm being surveilled, I'm being followed, and so she kind of zigged and zagged and turned, and I guess he kept up with her, and so that's how she identified that I think I'm being followed. So she kind of identified that there was... She was in... have you ever heard of Cooper's Color Codes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so for any of the listeners that aren't
that's
aware...
a lifeline. That's concepts. That's a perfect example.
Right. Yes.
Understanding concepts, you can apply it to your life.
Let's take that concept, let's apply it to your wife's scenario from last week when he sent her out for 2% milk.
Yeah.
Okay, it starts off in condition white. Condition white is you're completely unaware. You got your earbuds, AirBuds in, whatever. AirBuds the name of a dog.
I know. AirBud.
I'm way behind the times. So anyways, you're buried in your phone. You're not aware. You're shut off, right?
Which happens all the time.
All the time, yeah.
All the time.
And so you are a sitting duck, essentially, because there's nothing you can do to prevent the threat from coming because you can't identify any threat. You're not paying attention. You're in your own little bubble. If you escalate to the next level of awareness, you're in condition yellow, which is, okay, I'm got my head on a swivel. I'm looking around here. I'm seeing, just what's around me and being aware. And if you identify a potential threat, there's this weird little there's some of that intuition, that gut feeling, or there's some behavior that's kind of giving me a red flag. Now you're in condition orange because you're clued in or you're zoned in on a specific thing that may or may not be a threat. You're identifying potential here. And so you take whatever measures you need to. Maybe I zig or zag or take a turn here, whatever the case is. Okay, he's still following me. So now I've identified that there is an actual threat here.
Yeah.
Right? Now
from orange, you have not been able to get back to yellow.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now you're in red. Okay, there's a threat, an imminent threat. I have to do something to stop this from getting to the next stage, which is under attack. And what your wife chose was, I see a group of people there. I'm going to absorb myself into that group. And then you just walk by. So she did the perfect risk and threat management in that scenario. If that group wasn't there, she could look for maybe, I don't know, the time of night or whatever the case is. Maybe there's an open, she's walking by any sort of establishment, restaurant, bar, store, anything she can go into, somewhere where there's cameras, if there's a gas station, anything like that.
Yeah, well lit,
yeah,
well traveled or something, yeah.
Nothing wrong with, getting on the horn too. Usually have your cell phone with you in 911.
Yeah, I knew a girl, I remember her saying that, I just remember this kind of happened to her, and she called her mom, and she said, and she turned around and she said, Mom, and she just started like almost like faking an argument with her mom, but her mom was on the phone, but just talking with her mom really loud so that that person who was possibly walking behind and following her would know she's on the phone with someone else. Okay, so that, as a diversion.
So there's that. There's also, you can, depending on what you're carrying on your on your person on a daily basis, or what you have with you, you can prepare yourself for a confrontation, right? So maintaining awareness of the distance between yourself and that person following you or coming up behind you, you can cross the street, and if they're again, like on a third time, they're crossing the street with you, then if you have a pen or some kind of object that you can use to strike them with,
Right.
you can then prepare, turn around and confront them if you're capable, or if you feel that you can cause enough damage to give yourself a window to get away. You can start bolting. There's another one. Not everybody wears shoes that are really helpful to run
Conducive
with.
for-
Yeah,
Right.
conducive
Yeah.
of running. But if
And that's why I never wear high heels out in the city.
I know. It's
Just
only-
behind closed doors,
Yeah,
right?
on
I'm
it's
a
just a Saturday night
I'm
thing,
a
right? Yeah.
practical guy.
Yeah.
you know?
That's right.
But that's the thing. You want, like, if you're able to do something like that, then you can just, or you get to a corner, right, and that person's maybe 30 feet behind you. As soon as you get the corner, you turn and you start running, right? And by the time that person gets to the corner, they don't know that you're running. They're going to get there, and you're like 150, 200 feet away, and then they have to ask themselves, well, am I going to run after this
Yeah, are
person?
they going to pursue?
Well,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, definitively.
And
Are
if
they
they-
pursuing or not?
That's right. If they turn the corner and they're just kind of doing their own thing, and you're 200 feet in front of them now, and they're not running, they're not doing anything, they're just doing their own thing, then you can start to reevaluate that situation, right? For the flip side of the coin, though, I've had these kinds of conversations with women, with my wife, with my daughters and stuff like that, and I listen to their concerns, and the same thing would be like when we've done the women's self-defense stuff, to what are their issues that they deal with, and this is a common one, and I try and take those lessons or those tidbits and incorporate them into my daily movements. So if I find myself walking down the street one night and I find myself, 10, 15 feet behind a lone woman, I will cross the street
Yeah.
to
I've
not
done the
give
same.
her any anxiety, because I think to myself, like, and
An
it doesn't-
unknowing indicator. You're
That's
not
right.
trying to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because I don't want to cause undue anxiety to somebody, and I've been told I don't look like the friendliest guy sometimes because of my beard,
All lies.
and I'm like I'm 6'3", so I'm kind of imposing.
Yeah.
But I try and remember that sometimes, and it's like, it's dark. Maybe I
Yeah.
don't want any, like, I don't want to freak somebody out.
Yeah.
So I'll go out of
And
my
you're just
way.
wearing those brass knuckles for style.
That's right.
It's
Just
style.
like
Just a
that.
fashion statement.
And so I'll go out of my way to cross the street away from them and to give them a wide berth and stuff like that. Even if if I'm coming up towards them, I'll cross the street so I can pass them and whatever, because I think that's another part of the problem, is that a lot of guys won't know that they're doing that, and they may not know that they're causing that kind of anxiety or coming off as
Yeah.
threatening, even though they're totally harmless, right?
Yeah.
But
Like at an ATM in the night, they
Yeah.
got to get their cash, and they're 3 feet behind the lady in
yeah,
front of them.
like take a few
And, like,
steps
yeah,
back,
just
get on your,
look
pretend,
casuals.
look-
Open
ca-
up to the street versus face them directly.
That's
things
right.
Like
do
that.
do something like that so you don't come off as aggressive. And sometimes you have to stop yourself and check yourself and be like, ooh, maybe that is coming off as a bit of aggressive, because if it's a group of people, then who cares, right? But I mean, if it's just like one-on-one, you find yourself in a in an ATM booth at like late at night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like de-escalate that situation. You never know. Maybe she's taken some training and turns around and like stabs you with a pen or something like that.
Right.
And you've
It's
done
true.
nothing
That's the
wrong,
other side.
but you may have presented in a way that's confrontational and that's
Yes.
hostile. So I tend to keep that in mind, because I don't want to perpetuate that kind
I
of
face
thing.
the wall in an elevator. That's what I do. I just
for fun.
just little yeah.
The one thing I wanted to touch on, just to add to what Boris was saying, we're talking about those, picking up on those cues, okay, zigging and zagging through the street. So if he crosses the street again, he's following you, how to identify that threat, but also being aware of what's going to be happening on the inside, right? Like, you feel a threat, your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure spikes, your tunnel vision, you get auditory exclusion, your legs turn to jello. And if you're not
from the
expecting that,
adrenaline.
and if you're not prepared for that, that can kind of induce more panic. So in our courses too, we prepare people for that. And so they understand that when they feel that happen, they say, okay, this is normal. This will pass. Here's how I deal with this. And here's how I manage my own physiological symptoms of this threat, right? That's also important.
That's amazing. Yeah, to be mindful of that. Those personal indicators
Yeah.
of what it's like to go through that stress, right?
Yeah.
Really cool.
When's the conference coming up? We said October, right?
Yeah, we have it October 18th to 20th.
Okay.
If I can, I'd like to touch base on
Right here,
touch
yeah.
on some of the guys
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
are coming. So
Yeah,
we should hold that.
For sure. There's 6
Hey,
people
hey.
in the group,
There you
right?
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
6 GREYMAN.
Yeah.
So we have Boris. He's teaching his counter custody and other true aircraft skills, as we already touched on. I'm going to be dealing with kind of the close quarters combatives, kind of the stuff that has a lot of high mileage, high return for low investment, gross motor oriented skills. They're going to be able to put out a lot of force and a lot of damage in a very short amount of time to get out of there. Because of course, in a defensive scenario, your goal is to get out of it safely.
Okay.
How do we do that? We have another gentleman he's coming in from Edmonton. His name is Ace Johnson. He's going to be dealing with urban survival. So as Boris had mentioned, kind of procuring things from your environment. Maybe you're traveling in a non-permissive environment. Maybe you travel to Mexico and you hop into a convenience store. What can I buy off the shelves here to fashion personal security equipment for myself in the event that something occurs?
Shiv 101.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So
it.
we call it
Hood Rat Arts and Crafts.
Hood Rat Arts and
I
Crafts,
like
or
it.
Hobo Tactical, but
Yeah.
Ace is from Delta to Alpha Design, so he deals with some of that stuff.
We have a good friend, Adam Nasrallah. I think you've actually met Adam.
I have,
Last
I
time
have.
I was
Yes.
here, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's a former counterintelligence officer with SIT6, and he's going to be dealing with stealth communication tactics, so tactical communication. Some guy, I'm working in security. I have to eject someone from this venue. He wants to take my head off. How do I turn this guy into a friend or make the situation from hostile to not so hostile?
I usually just say, I love your eyes.
Right?
Is that like grayish blue or greenish gray?
GREYMAN Grey.
So glad you noticed. He's going to be dealing with social engineering. So, maybe I need access to information that I'm not supposed to have. How can I talk to this individual here to get that information from them? What tools do I have? So he's going to talk about that. We have a federal law enforcement trainer coming, Chris Mandigma of the Pakiti Tertia Tactical Association in Canada. He's going to deal with arrest controls, some more security-based stuff, but again, conceptual-based stuff that someone can apply after, this physical skills are perishable, but the concepts you can apply after very little training.
And the arrest and controls isn't necessarily just for security and law enforcement. If you find yourself in a situation where you're having a confrontation with someone, you may not be going to the extreme with it. You just want to hold them, or you want to be able to control them so they can't access a weapon or they can't continue their assault. Well, you're going to be looking at those controls, right? So it's the same kind of controls that it would be for the regular civilian walking down the street, right?
Okay.
So it's a skill set that applies to everybody. It just comes down to where you as an individual are going to apply those skills.
Yeah.
That's right. And finally, we have Adam DeFreitas out of Mississauga. He is a correctional officer. He's on attack unit, and he is also now a pro MMA fighter. Absolute dangerous guy. He just looks like an absolute beast, but he's one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. And also, he's going to be a new dad, so pretty excited about that as a new dad myself. And he's going to be dealing with urban weapons management, specifically edged weapons on the ground. He's going into cells with prisoners that want to murder him, and they have their shivs, and and they're in that tiny little cell. So he's dealing with riot scenarios. He's dealing with hostage situations, and in our prisons here, a high percentage of the population is going to have some sort of bloodborne illness.
Nice.
And so he's dealing with that as well. So edged weapon management primarily in kind of close quarters and while grounded, okay? And not a lot of people deal with that. So this is a guy that's a pro MMA fighter, has a lot of experience in prisons dealing with this. And so it's just coming from a lot of really good experience. And so we're going to get some really good concepts and ideas out of him. And an issue that's close to both Boris and I is human trafficking. I had mentioned prior to Mexico, my cousin had passed away, and he was doing a lot of work in Haiti and the Dominican. And his kind of emerging passion was for victims of human trafficking. So we thought that we could do some good with this event. Rather than providing some quality training, we could take a percentage of our proceeds and give it to an organization to help fight for that cause, to get people out of that lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's a very, very real lifestyle that goes on. Again, everything that you've been talking about today, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that don't. It doesn't really happen. It doesn't exist. I mean,
That's in the movies.
yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, it's very, very, very real. It's funny when you guys are talking about situational awareness and knowing things. I remember when I was young, probably I would say, I don't know, maybe 13 years old, and I was living in Cyprus. And I was walking in the village. Literally, it was in the village area, and this truck pulls up, and there's these two guys in there, and like, hey, do you want to ride? I'm like, you know what? I mean, it's very hot. I wouldn't mind a ride, right? That was my initial. So I get into their truck, and they kind of make me sit in between them, right? So I'm in there sitting between them, and I'm thinking something does not feel right. And I remember at the very young age feeling something does not feel right whatsoever right now. So they start driving the car, and I'm looking around thinking, actually, I think I dropped the watch when I was coming up here. Just let me grab my watch really quick. And I just got out of the car, just started running, okay?
Yeah.
But to me, it's like these instincts inside me.
Yeah.
I remember at a very young age, all went on full tilt, right? And I think a lot of times, and that's just me at a young age, but I think everyone has that. Every individual has that where they can kind of maybe sense something. And if you don't, you may be being a little bit too naive to the situation.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys are able to build the skill set where someone can kind of tap into is very needed.
Yes.
Very, very, very needed. If I'm someone looking for this conference,
Right.
How do I find you?
You can go to a couple different ways. You can go to GREYMANsecurity.com. GREYMAN spelled the good old Canadian way. That's another thing about GREYMAN. It's all Canadian content, all Canadian presenters, all Canadian everything.
It's the better way to spell it too.
That's
100%.
right.
Yeah. So GREYMAN security.com. You can register online there as well. Also, we are on Instagram at GREYMAN Security. Boris is at True North Tradecraft. I am at Kennedy.tactical. On the web, truenorthtradecraft.ca, kennedytactical.ca. And kind of through any of those means, you can kind of get to the GREYMAN Security Conference. But the best way is just to go directly to greymansecurity.com, and all the information for all of our instructors, all of the course content, the training calendar, all that kind of stuff is on there.
Now, for all the millions of viewers that are listening to this,
Right.
and, the hopes, is there something that you can say today as almost like a little bit of a taste of what they can get out of the course? Is there like a user tip of the day that you can give to someone listening to this about just situational awareness or something they can apply? Anything at all?
Always have an escape plan.
Okay. Can you give us an example of that?
So, have you guys seen the
And
movie?
that's a business principle too.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
You always have an
Exit
exit
strategy.
strategy.
Yeah.
That's right. So, have you seen the movie Ronin with Robert De Niro?
You know what? That takes place in
No.
Paris, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, and a bunch of other places.
not seen it.
Yeah.
Okay, if you haven't seen it, you really should, because it's an exceptional film. But Robert De Niro plays a CIA operative, right? And they're walking into this cafe for this meeting with a bunch of different mercenaries, and the one guy says, "Well, why are you doing it this particular way?" And he says, "I never walk into a place without knowing how to walk out of it." And it's like very like, oh, he's so badass. But the concept is the real underlying thing here is that if you go out into the world and you're prepared for it, then you have higher probability of being able to live another day, to get through and be resilient to things that are going to affect you either negatively or lethally, right?
Or come out unscathed.
That's
if
right.
There is something. Yeah.
So you can mitigate those effects. You can mitigate those threats. So continuously learn, continuously be aware of the world around you, and understand that it's a very thin veneer between the kind of Instagram world, and the reality TV world versus what's actually out there. Most people go through life thinking nothing will ever happen to them, and hopefully nothing ever does. But when it does happen to them, then they go out and they start seeking ways to improve themselves or get stronger or learn skills and protect themselves. That's when they go out and buy, security systems for their homes and things like that. They do it after something's happened, instead of investing in themselves sooner and then mitigating those threats before they happen.
That's awesome, man.
If
That's
I can,
well said.
If I can add, that's good, like time management too, meaning that he walks into that place, he identifies the exits, he identifies fire extinguishers, he identifies multiple entries, points of entry. Maybe there's a bar top or a table or a counter that is, that can, if someone was to walk in and start spraying bullets, maybe it's something that you can hide behind. Maybe it'll just hide you, but maybe it'll stop the bullets coming through, depending on what it's made out of. But identifying all these things will allow you to act a lot faster when something happens, because that plan's already been formulated and you can act on it a lot quicker, rather than the shit hits the fan and now I have to kind of figure out what to do in that moment. And you're going to be kind of all thumbs maybe in that moment if you haven't already identified your courses of action that you could take.
And and it's not about being like scared. You walk into a place and you're like, oh my God, what if this, what if that? Once you practice it enough, it becomes subconscious and it's automatic, and you don't stress yourself out by it, right? But you just come in, you have a background awareness of what's going on and what's available to you if something goes sideways, and you just carry on from there, right? I have a book out on disaster preparedness, and it's the same kind of concept-based approach. This may happen: natural disasters, power failures, floods, all that sort of stuff, and how to pre-position supplies and how to get ready for that. And it's too late once your house is flooded to start filling sandbags, right? It's ruined already. So you want to have that stuff pre-positioned. You want to have the knowledge and everything beforehand, and you want to stay on top of it so that when the signs present themselves, when that tripwire is tripped, that you can spring into action with a plan you've already formulated, and you can be successful, right? That's the goal.
That's awesome. Man, you guys honestly are delivering a very valuable service that I think people are going to really, really appreciate.
We hope so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Look, guys, thank you so much for coming down. Boris,
thank you
TJ,
for having
man,
us.
Thank you.
The GREYMAN group. Now, one of the things, if you can just throw out the date, when is this conference happening?
October 18, 19, and 20, 2019. And it
Okay.
will be taking place at 161 Watline Avenue in Mississauga.
Okay.
And again, you can find out more details, register at greymansecurity.com, and any questions can go to info@greymansecurity.com, and we'll be happy to assist.
Beautiful. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you very much.
You sparked my interest here, and I think there's something here that I think personally from our circles can definitely bring immense value into this. Immense value. And thank you for making us aware.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
guys.
for having us. Take care.
Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the pleasure.
Listen to this episode on iTunes and Spotify. Make sure to drop by next week. And don't forget to subscribe.
Let's go!
It's time to give a shout out to our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Sentinel Security Plus. For all your premium security needs, visit SentinelSecurityPlus.com.
And The Substance Group for all your integrated marketing solutions. Visit TheSubstanceGroup.com.